This is The Allusionist, in which I, Helen Zaltzman, mould language into a golem and try to order it around, but it just shouted, "You're not the boss of me," and went next door to live with my neighbours who took it to the water park and the model village and gave it ice cream for breakfast. And I can't offer it that kind of life, although sometimes I think it feels a bit nauseous and then it misses me. This is the 199th episode of the show, and since before The Allusionist began, for nearly a decade, I have been jotting down ideas for the show in two documents. One is for short ideas, one is for long ideas. There are always more ideas than I have time and ability to make podcasts about, so now the documents are altogether 66 pages long and growing every day. So in this episode, you are going to hear 199 ideas that I would like to put in the podcast, and I just haven't yet. And there's still far more lurking in the documents. And if you want to be in the 200th episode, I want you to be in the 200th episode. Write a quiz question that has something to do with language. It's pretty loose. The format can be multiple choice or of your own devising. And submit your question in written or voice form via theallusionist.org/quiz. Your deadline is the 6th of September 2024, so get on with it. I like our annual quiz episodes, and if you're setting the questions, I can actually try to do this quiz. So go forth and quiz me and your fellow listeners at theallusionist.org/quiz. I'm currently mid-tour of the UK with the new Allusionist live show Souvenirs about the ancient roots of a sweary tech problem and the suffix gate and a font-based friendship breakup. One happy-seeming customer described it as the right balance of facts and emotions, which is always what I hope for. The tour runs until mid-September 2024. Dates and ticket links are listed at theallusionist.org/events. And if you have an arts venue or festival of some kind that you would like us to perform at, then do get in touch. We don't perform live that often, and because the Allusionist live shows are made for the stage, most of them never appear on the podcast, but they are my favourite things to do, so I'd love for you to see them. theallusionist.org/events. And this tour has delightful merch that I drew myself, including a tea towel and a souvenir magnet, and free bookmarks for anyone who wants one. On with 199 ideas that I haven't made into podcasts yet. Things people say to elicit a smile in photos. Say cheese! Prune. Silson twins. The Juliet Club, who answer letters sent to Juliet in Verona, because she's not going to answer them herself, being A, dead, B, fictional, and C, having terrible luck with letters. The lost positive of desperate, sperit, which was a legal term for a debt that might be recoverable. The phrase family values. The prefix muck, like McMansion or McGuffin. The suffix core. The suffix tron. The Italian suffix opoli. Aftermath, which originally meant the sowing of a second crop of grass after the first one had been cut. Kensington Gore, the nickname for stage blood. Boudoir originally meant the pouting room or sulking room. Puce, meaning flea colour. Colour of the fleas or colour of the flea bites. Magenta, from a battle location in Italy. Stillicide, a word that meant dripping of drops. In ancient Roman law and less ancient Scottish law, there were rules about water dripping off your eaves onto someone else's land or building. Related is styricide, icicles dropping from a house. Schwa, as in the unstressed vowel, but the word meant emptiness. Delete, its Proto-Indo-European word of origin, meant slime. Because the Romans wore things like togas and not breeches like the Gauls and the Germans, they had the word bracatus, that literally meant wearing breeches, but was used as a geographical term to denote regions north of the Alps, where breeches were rife. Travesty, dressed in disguise. Pageant, a scene from a mystery play. Why so many pubs are called the Red Lion. Grizzly bear species name is Ursus arctos horribilis. That's rude. Gimbal, from the Old French for twins. the first use of simultaneous translation being the Nuremberg trials. Brochure meant a stitched work because the pages were stitched together. Pimento is related to pigment because the berries gave colour to food and drink. Album used to be a white board with public notices and names written on it in black. Loads of fencing terms in etymology. Riposte, a counterattack after fending off a parry from your opponent. Acumen, that meant sharp. Foible, the weak point of the sword blade. Forte, the strong point of a sword blade. Dwell, originally to deceive or lead astray. Artery used to also mean windpipe. Bet that never caused problems in medical situations. Capsize shares a root word with biceps, the root word being caput, meaning head. Chapter meant little head. Migraine is from the Greek hemicrania, or hemicrania, meaning half skull. Beret originated from the Latin term for a large hooded cloak. Chaperon was also from a hooded cloak because of the connotations of protection. Limousine was named for the original type of covered car's supposed resemblance to a hood worn by humans in the Limousin region. Faux pas, a false step. Scavenger, a litter collector. Pluck, noun, organ meat extracted from carcasses to prepare them for market. Toady, a charlatan's assistant who would eat a toad so that the charlatan could then administer a miracle cure. Kingfishers used to be called halcyon, and the halcyon days were a fortnight, 7 days either side of the shortest day of the year, where the seas were still, so as not to disturb the egg-filled nest on the beach of a mythical kingfisher, transformed from the goddess Alcyone. Jade was from colic. The stone was thought to cure it. Etymologically, this is unrelated to the other meaning of jade, a worn-out horse. The word crestfallen was possibly also to do with diseased horses, and crest-risen was the victorious flip side. Pecuniary came from cattle. Livestock were measures of wealth in the ancient world. Also cattle-related, maverick, which is an eponym from Samuel Maverick, who, among other deeds during his life, bought a lot of land but refused to brand his cattle. He said because he didn't want to hurt the cows. Other people's explanation was that he would be able to pretend any unbranded cow belonged to him. The size of his herd suggests actually the latter was not his plan, but his treatment of humans, he was an enslaver, means we shouldn't get all, "Oh, how compassionate," over him not wanting to brand cows. Samuel Maverick's grandson, Maori, coined the word gobbledygook. Twist, the flat part of a hinge. Candle twist, a wick. Rival meant one who shares the same stream. Slogan was a battle cry. Scruple was a small sharp pebble. Rosemary was the dew of the sea. Retina, a net-like tunic. Popsicle was almost an eponym, epsicles, from Frank Epperson, who had accidentally invented them when he was aged 11 and had left a drink with a stirring stick in it outside overnight in the cold. When he was an adult in 1923, he went about trademarking his epsicles, the second half sickle like an icicle, but supposedly his kids called them popsicles, so he went with that. It's a portmanteau. But also, other explanations are that it's because it was frozen pop. Still, could have been epsicles. Extravagant, a type of papal decree, also meant rambling. Harlot, originally a vagabond, a tramp, then a jester or actor. It wasn't a female sex worker until the 14th or 15th century. Shredmill was invented and named in 1822 for use in prisons as a punishment. Bespoke was from bespeak, meaning something arranged in advance. Atacop was a medieval word for spider, and it meant poison head. The cop part is related to cob in cobweb. Concrete, the sense of solid, tangible, non-abstract, led to the substance of the same name. Loom used to mean any tool, and also was a euphemism for penis. Menu was from small or minute, because it was a minute list of things. Tire is from attire, as in the tire is the dressing of the wheel. In 2018, the Hawaiian Studies professor Kaleikoa Ke'eo appeared in court on protest charges, and the judge issued an arrest warrant for contempt of court on the grounds that he did not respond when asked to confirm his presence at the court appearance. He was present at the court appearance and he did respond, but he did so in Hawaiian language, not English. It's his right to. Hawaiian is an official language, but that judge didn't speak it. This is bad stuff on the judge's part, and the arrest warrant was soon dropped. Also, in Hawaiian, I wanted to investigate the song Mele Kalikimaka, the title being the English phrase Merry Christmas, rendered in Hawaiian phonology. It's not a term that originates from Hawaiian language. Escape, to leave your pursuer holding your cape, but importantly, not you in it. Patio, from a pact or making a treaty. An episode about syndromes named after cities. Ludo, which has many other names like Parcheesi, is in Finland called Kimball, after Richard Kimball of The Fugitive notoriety. History of courtroom oaths, how words are legally binding. Lawsuits arising because of misplaced commas. Surprising how many of these there are. I would love to interview the person at the DMV who assesses vanity license plate applications and rejects them if they breach the guidelines around being offensive, vulgar, misleading or blasphemous, because this person has to stay really up to date with the latest slangs, slurs and cheeky acronyms. Cowboy being a diss to black cowboys, the white cowboys having been called cowhands. Sabotage, French shoes thrown into machines. Not names like Josephine Knott or Carrick Bend. Oprah Winfrey's first name being because people so often mispronounced her given name Orpah. The comedian Joe Lycett legally changing his name to Hugo Boss to make a point. Kevinismus or Kevinism, German associations with certain names perceived to be modern and coming to Germany from American or British culture. Kevin is actually an old Irish name. Saint Kevin from the 6th century was the patron saint of blackbirds. Karens. What can perfectly innocent Karens do to free their name of this association? Noon used to mean 3 p.m. and midnight. 17th century women in England made letters out of pastry to practice reading and writing. Raining cats and dogs. In Brazil, the comparative idiom is "it's raining Swiss knives," which I think makes more sense than cats and dogs. Hard rain is more knife-like than dog-like. Why the word fine has so many meanings. Penalty, adequate, exquisite, thin, attractive. The difference between irony, sarcasm and satire. Let's just try and get this straight. How language enacts propaganda. Like, the term peace officers. Yeah. Why is the letter H pronounced H? The Sarah Party, the annual gathering of people called Sarah. Have any of you ever been? Is there one for Helens? What is it like to have a name doppelganger? I don't believe I have one, but my husband does, and it is sweet to see the Martin Austwicks interact online sometimes. What is it like to be named after someone and then realise, wow, my namesake's a terrible person? The fake swears they dub into the edits of films on planes. I've had enough of these mother-loving snakes on this Monday to Friday plane, and yippee-ki-yay, melon farmer. That kind of thing. Dinosaur names. Comedians who perform in multiple languages. How do you adapt the material? Because you can't just directly translate comedy. And some things don't translate at all. Why is K supposedly the funniest letter? The euphemisms obituary writers use so they don't have to state outright that the late subject was horrible. How do place names affect the place? The Cape of Good Hope, for instance, versus Disappointment Lake. How did the word amateur evolve from lover to unprofessional or low standard? What shift happened in ideas of professionalism to make amateur its opposite and inferior? The word apartheid, meaning aparthood, and chosen by its practitioners because it sounded more passive than a term like segregation. This is a story that I did employ someone a few years ago to investigate. Allegedly, in Chicago in the late 1970s and early 1980s, the Naval Investigation Service learned that gay men sometimes referred to themselves as friends of Dorothy. But the Naval Investigation Service didn't realise this was a slang term referring to Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. They thought there was a real Dorothy, the linchpin friend of a huge coterie of gay men, and so they tried to track her down, in the hopes that she could shop the gay men to them. Huge if true, but my linguistic investigator was not able to confirm if any of this was real. Martha's Vineyard Sign Language, Black American Sign Language, the the Yolngu people in northern Australia, who have an endangered sign language that contains more than 1,800 signs. It is a primary language used by deaf people, but also it is used by non-deaf people in situations where speaking aloud is culturally forbidden, such as during periods of mourning, or in the presence of sacred objects, or during ceremonies and dances, and when hunting, and also in the presence of poison kin. Certain family relationships are taboo. Also, Indigenous Australians not using people's names after their deaths, instead using substitute names or descriptions. Posthumous honorary names in Asian cultures. Pandanus language, an avoidance language used while gathering pandanus nuts, during which certain words are not to be used lest they inhibit the growth of the nuts. So the pandanus language replaces those words instead, but it can only be spoken in the realm of the nuts. Fathom. I've had so many requests to cover this word, I don't know why I've never done it. Fathom was a measurement based on the length of the outstretched arms. In 2023, a judge in Canada ruled that a thumbs up emoji was as legally binding as a signature on a contractual negotiation over the sale of 86 tons of flax. Thought stoppers. The Italian insult "che pizza," meaning what a pizza, to mean something is boring. Why X became a symbol for maps, signatures, in maths as a replacement letter in Latinx, women with an X in between the M and the N. Pedigree, the foot of a crane, as in the bird. The French system for naming pedigree dogs. Each year they have to start with a specific letter of the alphabet, although K, Q, W, X, Y and Z aren't in the mix because there aren't enough French names beginning with those letters. Next year, 2025, they start again at A. This system began in 1926 and was instituted so that people would know how old a dog is. Moving away from the term master bedroom, I think primary bedroom is coming in a lot more. Also, any movement on masterpiece, master degree, etc. How's that going? Hardware is moving its terminology away from master and slave and male and female terms, which, good. Amazing terms for unmarried women, like spinsters, thornbacks, which is a spinster over 26, ape leaders in France, Catherinettes, in Chinese, shengnu, meaning leftover ladies. The male equivalent is bare branches. Are these supposed to be disses? Because I love them. I love them. The word pregnant was banned from promotion for the 1956 film A Kiss Before Dying, which does feature a pregnancy as the inciting incident of the story. Grawlix is. Charcuterie means cooked or cured meats cold. So why does it now mean a food collage, some of which you can't even eat? I mean, no one is eating that whole raw artichoke. And should grapefruits, marshmallows and salami exist on the same spread? I know I should accept linguistic evolution, but this is out of hand. The fly agaric mushroom is maybe getting its name changed. Boy Scouts America is renaming in February 2025 as Scouting America. In Canada, Embers is the new name as of 2023 for members of the Girl Guides in the 7 to 8 age bracket instead of brownies. All eponym-named birds are getting new names in the USA. Does the word lazy actually mean anything? What were volcanoes called before the relatively modern word volcano, which was from Vulcan, the Roman god of fire? The letter charts that are part of the eye test. Are there writing systems that don't use those because they don't work? The origins of the term brainwashing. Furlongs, the length of a furrow and a unit of measurement that for a while was much more important than a mile. In fact, a mile had to be redefined so that it would match with the length of 8 furlongs. Doulas who seek a different term for themselves than doula because of that word's roots. La Leche League are updating their guide to chest feeding so it's more gender inclusive. Gender inclusive language in menstruation apps. The naming system for IKEA products, developed in 1948 by IKEA's founder Ingvar Kamprad, who was dyslexic, and their names helped him remember all the products. There are different kinds of words for different categories of products. For instance, bathroom items are named after Swedish lakes and rivers, beds and wardrobes get Norwegian place names, and there are long-running rumours that IKEA denies that rugs and other floor coverings are named after Danish places as a diss to Denmark. Jokes on that diss, I've got a couple of IKEA rugs that are amazing, thanks Denmark. A couple of years ago, IKEA's Norwegian operation compiled 800 product names into a list to be used as baby name options, if you want to name your baby after an IKEA product. Swedish terms for jealousy: wears black stockings, medieval book protecting curses, patient, meaning someone in hospital, cusp, which has astrology origins, type, as in the letters, meant a blow. Stereotype and cliché were both printing terms, referring to being able to reproduce the same image again and again. Other printing terms: uppercase and lowercase, referring to the shallow trays in which printers kept their pieces of type, capital letters on the top, hence uppercase. In 2021, during Women's History Month, the book Feminist Cross Stitch was pulled from sale by the craft chain store Michaels and pulped because 10% of the patterns in it contained the F swear. The book had already been out since 2019, so Michaels had had enough time to notice that. And, weirdly, after saying it was because they don't sell any sweary products, and after they had trashed the physical copies, Michaels did start selling it on their website. Which is it, Michael? You do or don't sell swears? Anyway, after some outcry, they agreed that if it were to happen again, they wouldn't pulp books, but would put a language advisory sticker on the cover. Winterfilleth, an old term for what we now call October. It meant the start of winter. Names of the months. A lot of you have asked. I promise I will. I promise. I will. Janus words. In a lawsuit, the difference between using and or. Shibboleth, a word that I always have to look up, so maybe if I make a podcast about it, I'll remember it. It worked for me when I named an episode Lacuna, which before that had been another meaning I just couldn't retain. The activist and writer Sinead Burke got a term for little person into the Irish dictionary. Ether, electron, amber. Miasma, which meant toxic vapours. People thought breathing in bad air caused illness before they discovered what viruses were. The etymology of malaria, which also meant bad air. Miranda rights. That is a bad eponym. Why aren't we just calling them arrest rights instead of naming them after a harmful person? Interview with the letters Thorn and Eth, asking them what it's been like since they aren't in the English language anymore. Apostrophe the punctuation mark and apostrophe the rhetorical device. Terms like Boston marriage. Heroin was a trademark. The word tabloid originated in the 1880s as a trademarked word for a small tablet of medicine, and soon it came to mean a small compressed dose of something, such as news, in shorter, more easily digested form in the smaller format newspapers. The French word for octopus, which has caused some stir in Quebec. Places called New, Old Place, New Zealand, New York, Newfoundland. Have more imagination, colonisers. Also terms for places that indicate a certain centric view of the world, Antipodes, Middle East, etc. The history of the term Caucasian is not good. Bloomers, the garment, are named after the women's rights advocate Amelia Jenks Bloomer, who wasn't the first to wear them but did help popularise them in the 1850s as a more practical, healthier, less restrictive, more freeing garment for women. Of course, men hated that, so bloomers were the subject of abuse and ridicule in the streets and in the press. After a few years, the eponymous bloomer had stopped wearing bloomers so that she could blend in more and expend her energies on something else. The last name Bloomer had probably come from iron workers around the 13th century. The Turing test. Johann Fust, Gutenberg's dodgy partner in the printing press, he was accused of witchcraft because of the printed letters looking identical. Printing was pretty new in Europe, remember, and new technologies are all witchcraft. Why don't we have more English words for describing smells? Thai, for instance, has a lot of smell vocab. Coining science terms in Zulu for concepts like immune system and dinosaur. Cynosure, meaning a dog's tail, and having been an older name for the constellation that now goes by Ursa Minor. Salty, in the 16th century it was used about lecherous female dogs, and from there, people. Balloon. Average originated from an Arabic word that meant damage to a ship or its cargo, and the mathematical meaning came about from the ship's owners and insurers sharing the cost of the damage. Chord, the musical kind, is from catgut. The granola trademark wars. Grape nuts, from glucose, being from Greek for wine must, gluten, from glue because it's sticky. Vamp. The piano vamping is related to the vamp that is the front part of a shoe. Vamp being a corruption of the French avant-pied, in front of the foot. The vamp of a shoe might often have been repaired or replaced, thus the term revamp, and from this idea of patching things up, vamp lent itself to the sense of improvising something, hence the piano sense. This is all unrelated to the other sense of vamp, a hottie, which is a shortening of vampire that has unclear etymology, but has probably nothing to do with shoes. The word aspirin was trademarked by a German chemist in 1899. It came from the plant Spirea, also known as meadowsweet. Elixir was originally a powder for drying wounds and was for a long time an alchemy term. Vindication came from taking vengeance. Etymology of dungeon. A 14th century slang term for pubic hair was netherbeard. Petition. When it entered the English language in the 14th century, it meant a prayer, but in the Latin whence it came, it meant an attack. Weregild, the price for someone's life. Note the were, like werewolf, which talked about in an early episode, meant man-wolf. Croupier is from horse rumps. Nurse comes from the word nutritia and was originally a wet nurse and then became a dry nurse, and from there a healthcare nurse. Germain, having the same parents. Acne is possibly a misreading of acme, meaning a point. Habit went from the clothing to mean repeat behaviour. Dessert was from the French for clearing the table. Grenade is from pomegranate, which itself meant an apple with many seeds. Blurb was originally a mocking term. Valid meant having force in law. Positive and negative. Positive was a 14th century legal term meaning legislated, from Latin positivus meaning settled by agreement. The opposite was natural, meaning by birth or according to nature. And the earliest form of negative, adjectival from around 1400, meant a denial. Taint was from Middle English to prove guilty or convict. Whelm is a real word. It was to cover or turn, and overwhelm meant to turn over or capsize. Ditto. Italian used the word to avoid the repetition of month names in a series of dates. Tutu was probably a reduplication of kulkul, meaning bum bum. Another garment from bum. Culottes. Those were 199 ideas I didn't make into a podcast, except for this one right now. If you'd like to help fund more episodes of The Allusionist, then you can do so by becoming a member of the Illusiverse at theallusionist.org/donate. You'll be getting some puzzle-tastic bonuses soon, as well as merch perks at the live shows, and you get live streams of relaxing readings from my dictionaries, behind-the-scenes information about this show, including tour diaries, and membership of the Discord community that is so delightful. And we are watching the new season of Taskmaster together, because my brother is in it, and I love to see him struggle to solve problems. I still think fondly of the time back in 2006 when he couldn't open a box of chocolates because he didn't realise it was taped shut, and so started clawing through the lid. Anyway, theallusionist.org/donate. Your randomly selected word from the dictionary today is scute. Noun, zoology, a thickened, horny or bony plate on a turtle's shell or on the back of a crocodile, stegosaurus, etc. Try using scute in an email today. This episode was produced by me, Helen Zaltzman. The music is by Martin Orstwick of palebirdmusic.com and the podcast Neutrino Watch. Our ad partner is Multitude. If you want to advertise on this show and hear me come up with an original ad for your product every time, podcast advertising is known to be very effective, and it is because of what people like me do. You know, get amongst it. Contact Multitude at multitude.production/ads. And you can hear or read every episode. Get links to more information about the topics they're in, see the full dictionary entries for the randomly selected words, get tickets for live events, all at the show's forever home, theallusionist.org.